Rationalism is, again, the view that at least some knowledge is innate, we're born with it, and the mind can discover such truths using human reason alone, without any appeal to human experience. And rationalism typically relies on this notion of a priori knowledge. So a priori is Latin for from the earlier, or prior to or independent of experience. So a priori knowledge concerns propositions that can be known before we experience anything in the world. So some examples, one we'll talk about in just a second from Descartes, I think, therefore I am. And then other examples that are propositional, but are true by definition, right? All bachelors are unmarried men. We don't need experience to tell us that if you're a bachelor, you're an unmarried man, or if you're a bachelorette, then you're an unmarried woman, right? Those are just true independent of and prior to experience. So according to rationalism, we have some knowledge that we derive from using human reason alone. The other view that has been very influential in the history of epistemology is called empiricism. And we associate, for good reason, empiricism with the rise of modern science. And by modern science, I mean the scientific revolution, the so-called scientific revolution of the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, right? The rise of Isaac Newton, Galileo, other key figures that really inaugurate this new push to give us new sciences, new physics, geology, things like that, biology. So empiricism is the view that knowledge comes from experience, not reason alone. It comes from our senses. And most empiricists think that we're not born with any innate knowledge. So what are some examples of that kind of knowledge? Well, descriptive statements about specific things in the external world. So for example, the example I used earlier, that the Earth is a third planet from the sun, I know that from experience. I don't know that by using just my reason. It's not implanted on my soul or something like that. I have to learn from experience. And so this would be a key example of knowledge from the senses. Empiricism typically relies on a posteriori knowledge, which means from the latter, and this means independent or after experience, right? It's not innate. So empiricists think that propositions can be known only after we experience things in the world. So another simple example, Barack Obama was the 44th president of the United States. We don't know that from human reason, but we certainly know that from experience. Some philosophers have thought that the best way to conceptualize knowledge is to think of or combine the best features of both views, both empiricism and rationalism. So that captures the view very roughly of the famous philosopher Immanuel Kant, who argued that knowledge comes from both sources. So there's certainly some philosophers who take the best of both of those views and try to give us an overall schematic of knowledge and its roots. One major challenge to knowledge that is mentioned in the reading and that maybe you've thought about in other contexts is the problem of skepticism. So skepticism comes in a couple different varieties, but very roughly, skepticism is the view about epistemology that we lack knowledge in some fundamental way. And it usually comes in various degrees. So if you're an academic skeptic, then you think that there are at least some realms of which we as humans are completely ignorant, that we can't have knowledge about certain topics. So maybe it's about religion. So some people who are academic skeptics think, look, if there's a God, we can't have any knowledge of God. That's just something beyond human comprehension. And so we can't really claim to have any knowledge of a God or gods or things like that, right? That would be one example of someone who's an academic skeptic. There's another strain of skepticism that we get from ancient Greece, as well as various Asian philosophers, called Pyrrhonian or universal skepticism. This is the view that we can't know anything at all, that essentially whatever account of knowledge we come up with, whether it's the JTB account or some other account of knowledge, we never really meet that bar because there's always some reason to doubt what we think we know, right? Whether it's your birthday or who your parents are or what the planet, what the order of the planets is. Because if you look back at history, we seem to always be wrong about everything. We are always updating our quote unquote knowledge. And it seems like whatever conditions for knowledge we give, we never really meet them. So according to Pyrrhonian skeptics, we fall because knowledge requires certainty and we're never certain about anything. Another challenge to knowledge that often comes up is relativism. And I think it's really important to emphasize here just how influential this view has become, especially in the last, I don't know, I would say maybe 30 or so years. And even more pronounced than that, in my view, is how prominent relativism has become in this new age of fake news and misinformation online. A lot of people seem to be relativists, whether they know it or not, about knowledge. And there's a lot of other interesting things we could say here about this topic. But relativism, very roughly, is that truth just depends upon what a person believes. This is called subjective relativism. And if you're a subjective relativist, you think, look, if a person thinks it's true, then it's true.